The people were coming out to, show their support for the Marines so the Marines wouldn't shoot them down. She came out into the crowd. She had a grenade on her. She pulled the pin and was walking to the Marines.
A woman opened the door of a small house and stepped outside with her child. The rest of the street was deserted. The local Iraqis had gone inside, most of them scared. On January 4th, 2012, 2 days after his memoir, American Sniper, was published, Chris Kyle appeared on the Opie and Anthony radio show to promote his book. At one point, a caller asks Kyle if he had gotten into a bar fight with Jesse Ventura, the former Navy frogman, WWE wrestler, actor featured in Predator, governor of Minnesota, and outspoken critic of American foreign policy.
You were in a bar fight with Jesse Ventura. Is that true?
Is it? Yes.
In his book, Kyle claims that he was at a wake for a fallen SEAL at a bar in San Diego. Also present at the bar, Kyle writes, a celebrity I'll call Scruffface. Scruff served in the military. Most people seem to believe he was a SEAL. As far as I know, he was in the service during the Vietnam conflict, but not actually in the war. Kyle also claims Scruffface criticized George W. Bush, the invasion of Iraq, and that he moved to Mexico because he hates America. Additionally, he said 9/11 was a conspiracy. I'd imagine it wasn't impossible for readers to make the connection given the number of allusions to Jesse Ventura. But it was allegedly when Ventura said, with regard to the dead Navy SEAL, "You deserve to lose a few." Kyle offered to end it there, but being level-headed and calm can only last so long. I laid him out. Tables flew, stuff happened. Scruffface ended up on the floor. I have no way of knowing for sure, but rumor has it he showed up at the Buds graduation, a graduation for the SEAL and Underwater Demolition School, with a black eye. In July 2014, attorney A.J. Delgado wrote in the conservative National Review, Kyle should have perhaps left it at that. The day after his Opie and Anthony appearance, Kyle was on the O'Reilly Factor and repeated his claim, naming Ventura as the man he had punched in the face.
Now, you don't mention his name, but everybody knows who that is. Number one, that happened? You knocked him out?
Yeah. Well, I knocked him down.
Knocked him down.
He said we deserve to lose a few guys.
A day after the O'Reilly interview, Mike Opelka reported on the story for The Blaze. Days later, Opelka reported that Ventura took to Facebook to categorically deny Kyle's story. By this point, the story had become quite popular, and it was the #1 story on The Blaze.
Stunt Brain is working for The Blaze.
Yeah.
He put the whole audio up on The Blaze, and he wrote me late last night saying, holy fuck, this thing is doing really well. And this thing is not going away. Because now we got Chris Kyle saying he absolutely punched Jesse, Jesse saying it absolutely didn't happen.
Ventura spoke with Alex Jones and expressed bewilderment at the story.
He's confessing to assaulting me, and it didn't happen. I can unequivocally tell you that I've never been punched in Coronado, California since I've been out of the Navy. I got out of the Navy in active duty in 1973.
In February 2012, Ventura filed a defamation lawsuit against Chris Kyle in Minnesota. The trial hadn't yet begun when Kyle was shot and killed by a disturbed former Marine in February of 2013. More on that later. The defendant was now the executor of Kyle's estate, his widow, Taya. Perhaps for this reason most of all, the odds did not look good for Ventura. It will be a tough case for Ventura to win, said the Washington Post. Per the Associated Press, legal experts had said Ventura had to clear a high legal bar to win because as a public figure, he had to prove actual malice. Some people questioned whether he could prevail, said the New York Times, given the relatively high legal standard in such cases for public figures. The trial began in July of 2014 at the U.S. District Court in St. Paul. Ventura's defense played a 5-hour-long deposition that Kyle gave before his death. The Minnesota Star-Tribune reported, in video deposition, author trips up on fight details in Ventura libel suit. In the first half of a drama-packed day in U.S. District Court in St. Paul, Chris Kyle's widow Taya Kyle repeatedly broke down in tears on the witness stand as she recalled her late husband's commitment to protect his fellow soldiers. The 10-member jury was riveted. But afternoon testimony may have shifted some sympathy to Ventura's side. In the deposition, videotaped a year before his death, Chris Kyle said he could not remember who told him that Ventura had hit his head when he fell to the sidewalk, could not recall how he learned that Ventura had a black eye, and conceded that tables did not go flying during the 2006 confrontation in a bar near San Diego, which he described in his book American Sniper. While calmly stating that the fight had indeed occurred and that he had punched Ventura in the face, Kyle also conceded that Ventura may not have used a vulgarity in describing former President George W. Bush, which Kyle wrote in his book was one of the reasons he struck him. As A.J. Delgado wrote in the National Review, legal experts claimed Ventura had no shot. A widow crying on the stand? Too sympathetic. A decorated war hero who was tragically killed in an unrelated accident after Ventura filed suit? Too sympathetic. Ventura was facing an almost insurmountable uphill battle in an already tricky area of the law. However, in what was seen as a shocking decision by the jury, Kyle's estate was found liable for defamation and unjust enrichment over his claims. Ventura was awarded $1.8 million in damages. The decision among the 10-member jury was 8-2. Even before he won his suit, journalists did a poor job of hiding their contempt for Ventura. During the trial, the New York Times published practically word for word a list of supposedly unflattering quotes attributed to Ventura as read by the defense. The article serves no other purpose other than a virtual indictment of him. Is he controversial? CBS leadingly asked, followed by a number of his quotes clearly intended to discredit him. Not surprisingly, I didn't see similar article-length indictments containing unflattering quotes from Mr. Kyle. If you've read his famous book, you know there are several contenders. Longtime CNN broadcaster Anderson Cooper was outraged at the jury's decision, and even took to Twitter to air his views. I cannot believe that Jesse Ventura successfully sued the widow of a fallen Navy SEAL. Has he no shame? If there were any liberal corners of the media that were even implicitly taking Ventura's side, I haven't had an easy time finding them. I was really backed into a corner, Ventura said. I was left with no choice but to continue the litigation to clear my name because the story is fabricated. It never occurred, and it accuses me of committing treason against my own. I was part of the underwater demolition team SEAL community. These are my brothers. We're a fraternity. The media at large were apparently affronted by the outcome. In March of 2015, Variety reported that the Motion Picture Association of America and 32 media companies and organizations are supporting the estate of Chris Kyle as his widow appeals a libel verdict in favor of former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura. These companies included, among others, A&E Television Networks, the New York Times Company, and Time Inc. Their efforts were successful, as the appellate court overturned the verdict, including Ventura's award, citing arguments by the defense suggesting that Kyle's estate would be covered by the publisher's insurance. As explained by CNN, the appellate court did not rule on whose accounts of the events it believes are true, but whether unjust enrichment laws hold up in Minnesota and whether Ventura's lawyers improperly referenced an insurance policy covering Kyle's publisher HarperCollins from defamation settlements. A frightening prospect for media companies was successfully thwarted. Ventura stated his intention to continue with the lawsuit. Rather than return to trial, however, the case was settled out of court for an undisclosed amount.
The Kyle family did not pay one dime through this 5-year ordeal. It was paid for by HarperCollins and insurance.
If true, this would appear to add credibility to the claims of his attorney in the first trial, which were deemed unfair by the appeals court. In Ventura's 2016 appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast, he was asked why he thinks Chris Kyle lied.
I believe, and I'm not a doctor, but I've done some studying, I think he was a sociopath. Sociopaths can lie and hold a straight face, and they lie to the point where they believe their own lie.
If Kyle were a sociopath, it stands to reason that this would have aided him significantly in his military career. His job, after all, was to kill people, as he put it. Perhaps it would help explain his descriptions of killing people. I'll quote Kyle at length from his memoir to give a fair amount of context. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching, and if you'd like to support me, consider becoming a patron where I have exclusive videos that can't be shown on YouTube. I recently dropped a video there that I don't even know if I can discuss here on YouTube, so definitely check that out. Thank you so much to all of my patrons. I wouldn't be able to do this without you all. Also, thank you so much to everyone that has donated. I rely on my patrons and donations, as I'm not advertiser friendly. There's another question people ask a lot. Did it bother you killing so many people in Iraq? I tell them, no, and I mean it. The first time you shoot someone, you get a little nervous. You think, can I really shoot this guy? Is it really okay? But after you kill your enemy, you see it's okay. You say, great. You do it again and again. You do it so the enemy won't kill you or your countrymen. You do it until there's no one left for you to kill. That's what war is. I loved what I did. I still do. If circumstances were different, if my family didn't need me, I'd be back in a heartbeat. I'm not lying or exaggerating to say it was fun. I had the time of my life being a SEAL. With more detail on his method of killing. Contrary to what you're probably thinking, not all sniper shots, certainly not mine, take the bad guys in the head. Usually I went for center mass, a nice fat target somewhere in the middle of the body, giving me plenty of room to work with. During the American siege of Fallujah, Kyle recalled, looking out the window, I was anxious for the battle to start. I wanted a target. I wanted to shoot someone. Describing his tattoos, on the front of my arm, I had a Crusader cross inked in. I wanted everyone to know I was a Christian. I had it put in red for blood. I hated the damn savages I'd been fighting. I always will. They've taken so much from me. In the book's opening pages, he describes the enemy he was supposedly fighting. Savage, despicable evil. That's what we were fighting in Iraq. That's why a lot of people, myself included, called the enemy savages. There really was no other way to describe what we encountered there. With regard to how many he'd killed, the number is not important to me. I only wish I had killed more. Not for bragging rights, but because I believe the world is a better place without savages out there taking American lives. Everyone I shot in Iraq was trying to harm Americans or Iraqis loyal to the new government. The first person he kills in the book was a woman he claims was holding a grenade. It was clear that not only did she want to kill them, but she didn't care about anyone else nearby who would have been blown up by the grenade or killed in the firefight. Children on the street, people in the houses, maybe her child. She was too blinded by evil to consider them. She just wanted Americans dead no matter what. My shot saved several Americans whose lives were clearly worth more than that woman's twisted soul. I can stand before God with a clear conscience about doing my job. But I truly, deeply hated the evil that woman possessed. I hate it to this day. The woman was evil, Kyle alleges, too blinded by evil to consider the civilians and children that could die from the grenade blast and ensuing firefight. Kyle, however, doesn't appear to consider the civilians that could die as a result of the massive firepower that was called in to assist him and the other troops during the campaign in Al-Faw, or for that matter in Fallujah or Ramadi. All sorts of aircraft were overhead. FA-18s, F-16s, A-10As, even an AC-130 gunship. The Air Force A-10s, better known as Warthogs, were awesome. They're slow-moving jets. But that's intentional. They're designed to fly low and slow so they can put a maximum amount of gunfire on ground targets. Besides bombs and missiles, they're equipped with 30mm Gatling cannon. Those Gatlings chewed the hell out of the enemy that night. It got to the point where the Iraqis realized they were f***ed and tried to flee. Big mistake. That just made them easier to see. F***, I thought to myself, this is great. I f***ing love this. Indeed, Kyle was quite disinterested in the fate of the Iraqis, or as he put it, I could give a flying f*** about them. The book has sold well over 1 million copies. Already by March of 2012, it reached #1 in the New York Times hardcover nonfiction bestseller list. Though, as revealed during Jesse Ventura's defamation suit, a publisher boasted that the controversy has helped the book go crazy. In order to find the story of the killed Iraqi woman compelling, as many Americans apparently did, you'd have to take for granted that Iraqis had to be evil to fight Americans. Many Americans supported Afghan and Arab mujahideen in Afghanistan for fighting against the Soviets, who had invaded a Muslim country. Now that Americans do it, however, anyone who fights against that is evil and deserving of death. A debate was ignited by the release of the movie in 2014, with some raising questions about how the book differed from the movie. In retrospect, it's surprising to see who criticizes and defends Kyle in this exchange on Real Time with Bill Maher.
If you're a Christian, I know this is a Christian country, I hate the damn savages, and I don't give a fuck what happens. That doesn't seem like a Christian thing to say.
You can't sum up a man by one quote taken out of context. You don't know how he said that. And I think if you're fighting a war, I bet you say a lot of fucked up shit in the middle of it.
Well, that was after the war when he wrote a book.
All right, but you've been through a war.
Eisenhower once said, "I hate war as only a soldier who has lived it can."
Bret Stephens, then of the Wall Street Journal, is quite offended by Maher's criticism.
The savages he's talking about, aren't ordinary Iraqis. The savages are al-Qaeda killers.
The fact that a columnist from one of the largest American newspapers would use such disqualifying language to refer to a resistance comprising tens of thousands of people is telling, to say the least. He's since joined the New York Times as an opinion columnist. Even Chris Kyle distinguished between the range of political and religious affiliations among the resistance fighters. Some were former members of Saddam's army and members of the Ba'athist party that Saddam had headed. There were Fedayeen, members of a paramilitary resistance group the dictator had organized before the war. There were small, poorly organized groups of Iraqi guerrillas who were also called Fedayeen, though technically they weren't connected with Saddam's organization. Though nearly all were Muslim, nationalism rather than religion tended to be their primary motive and organizing principle. Then there were the groups organized primarily around religious beliefs. These identified themselves as mujahideen, which basically means people on jihad, or as Kyle calls them, murderers in the name of God. There was also Al-Qaeda in Iraq. All of them, according to Kyle, deserved to die for fighting the Americans. A foreign invader imposing its will on the people of Iraq through extraordinary violence. Military occupation and all the worst qualities of counterinsurgency, such as mass internment and torture, along with aerial bombardment and siege warfare. Despite the distinctions he made while promoting his book between savages and ordinary Iraqis, Kyle writes early on in the book, "I started killing a lot of Iraqis. We all were. But for everyone we shot, 4 or 5 seemed to materialize to take their place." He doesn't distinguish so carefully here about Iraqi savages and Iraqis. He just says he killed lots of Iraqis. Unsurprising given the rules of engagement at the outset of the invasion, which were, as Kyle recalled, if you see anyone from about 16 to 65 and they're male, shoot them. Kill every male you see. That wasn't the official language, but that was the idea. Indeed, Kyle was but one especially enthusiastic killer among scores of troops commanded by officers who told them to murder males indiscriminately, and who called in airstrikes with enormous firepower that killed indiscriminately. Shortly after Kyle's death in 2013, there was renewed interest in stories that Kyle told that raised doubts. For starters, Kyle claimed to have shot and killed 2 would-be carjackers in Cleburne, Texas in January of 2009. He told a Dallas journalist that police arrived afterward and they ran his driver's license. But instead of his name, address, and date of birth, what came up was a phone number at the Department of Defense. At the other end of the line was someone who explained that the police were in the presence of one of the most skilled fighters in U.S. military history, and they let him go without charge. Kyle said a tape of the incident was still out there, and that he got emails from police officers all over the country thanking him for cleaning up the streets. The Fort Worth Star-Telegram, however, investigated the claim and checked with the medical examiner's office, which reported no such deaths in Cleburne in January 2009. They additionally asked Cleburne police about it, and after a day of research, they said they had no record of such a shooting. Ditto for the Johnson County District Attorney's Office. This wasn't the only story that Kyle told that couldn't be verified. Shortly after his death, Nicholas Schmidl wrote a profile of Kyle for The New Yorker that followed up on his tall tales. Not long after Kyle was on the Opie and Anthony radio show, Kyle was with a group of people in his hotel suite, including a number of Navy SEALs, drinking late in the night. The SEALs began telling stories, and Kyle offered a shocking one. In the days after Hurricane Katrina, he said, the law and order situation was dire. He and another sniper traveled to New Orleans, set up on top of the Superdome, and proceeded to shoot dozens of armed residents who were contributing to the chaos. 3 people shared with me various recollections of that evening. The first said that Kyle claimed to have shot 30 men on his own. According to the second, the story was that Kyle and the other sniper had shot 30 men between them. The third said that she couldn't recall specific details. In my mind, this raises questions over the discrepancy between the number of people Kyle killed in Iraq according to the Department of Defense, some 160, and his personal claim of over 250, which were not confirmed. Apparently, confirmed means it was witnessed by someone else.
You have to have witnesses verify that he is dead.
Did he kill some 100 other people that nobody else saw? But in his Opie and Anthony interview, he says there were always people with him.
What is a confirmed kill? Someone else has to see you do it, or how do they confirm a kill?
Well, every time I went out, because I wasn't alone, there were always guys there to see it and to actually witness it.
The number of 160 confirmed kills now gives me pause. In an interview with Time to promote his book, the interviewer reveals,
somewhere, we can't get them out of the Navy, but somewhere there's 160 of those forms with your name on them.
Yes, ma'am.
As CNN put it after Kyle's death, although the military does not release such statistics, the book claimed Kyle had 160 confirmed combat kills. It's revealed in Kyle's book as follows. The Navy credits me with more kills as a sniper than any other American service member, past or present. I guess that's true. They go back and forth on what the number is. 1 week it's 160, the official number as of this writing, for what that's worth, then it's way higher, then it's somewhere in between. If you want a number, ask the Navy. You may even get the truth if you catch them on the right day. This description appears to conveniently leave room for the number to fluctuate, and also, since the military reportedly doesn't provide such information, to never be confirmed. I couldn't find many outlets who reported the oft-repeated 255 total killed, including confirmed and unconfirmed, before the book was published. One article from U.S. News & World Report from November 2011 announces the upcoming autobiography, saying, with 255 confirmed kills, the Iraq War veteran is considered the most lethal sniper ever. Following the book's release, HarperCollins included in a book description for their website, the Pentagon has officially confirmed more than 150 of Kyle's kills, but it has declined to verify the astonishing total number for this book. The 255 number was repeated ad nauseum by news outlets afterward, however, as the number Kyle claimed, against the 160 supposedly confirmed by the Pentagon, according to Kyle, the book's authors and publishers. Kyle's embellishments should raise questions about the other claims he made, to put it lightly. A particular story he described in his book comes to mind. One time in Iraq, according to Kyle, a man came out of a building and began maneuvering in the direction of a convoy. He had an AK. I shot him, he went down. But the army wanted to investigate this particular killing. A tank commander came out and interviewed the dead man's wife. She told them her husband was on his way to the mosque and carrying a Quran. Kyle said her story was ridiculous. But the officer, whom I'm guessing hadn't been in Iraq very long, didn't believe me. The soldiers began to look around for the rifle, but by that time, so many people had been in the area that it was long gone. Afterward, he was recalled to base, where he was interviewed by a colonel. Kyle was angry. I had trouble holding my tongue. At one point, I told the Army colonel, I don't shoot people with Qurans. I'd like to, but I don't. The colonel ended up dropping the matter 3 days later. Did they find the AK? He doesn't say. This is the book that Warner Brothers, Steven Spielberg, and Bradley Cooper wanted to turn into a movie. Spielberg left the project. His vision was too big budget. And Clint Eastwood took over, who happened to be reading the book when he got the call. There's some irony in Kyle's stated desire to shoot people with Qurans. Early on in the book, he admonishes Muslims, saying, "We don't kill people because they're a different religion. The people we were fighting in Iraq after Saddam's army fled or was defeated were fanatics. They hated us because we weren't Muslim. They wanted to kill us even though we just booted out their dictator because we practiced a different religion than they did." Isn't religion supposed to teach tolerance? Revealing the true nature of his prejudice against Muslims generally. Kyle's tirade against Islam is all the more confused when remembering how he described the various factions among the resistance, which included members of Saddam's army and Fedayeen, whose motivations were primarily nationalism rather than religion, in his words. Even Islamic groups such as the Islamic Army of Iraq did not want to kill Americans because they're Christians, but because they were violently overthrowing and occupying their sovereign Muslim country. Not everyone who fought in Iraq joined immediately either. Ahmed Mansour of Al Jazeera, one of the only foreign journalists present during the siege of Fallujah, spoke to a local resident who said, "They have gone too far in degrading us and humiliating us. I am to the point where I am ready to kill an American soldier if I get the chance. Saddam's men were awful, but we're a proud Bedouin people with a common code of honor that stood strong even with Saddam's men. His men never dared enter a home to search it until we made sure everyone was decent and our girls had a chance to properly veil themselves. Only then would we let them in to do their search. But those Americans are low-life rogues." Other developments, such as the Abu Ghraib torture scandal, mass internment, and the destruction and chaos caused by the siege warfare and aerial bombardment, were realities that drove many to the resistance. By no means did you have to be evil or fanatical to fight against the Americans. In fact, it was well within their right and quite moral for them to do so. The screenplay for the film American Sniper was based on Kyle's memoir, according to screenwriter Jason Hall. The opening scene is based on the opening of Kyle's book, The Story of the Evil Woman with the Grenade. In the film, she becomes even more evil as she passes the grenade to a child. Otherwise, she'd just be a woman fighting a legitimate war of resistance against a foreign military occupation. Now she selfishly and cruelly has a kid do it on her behalf, her own child even. As the story is told in the book, her child, curiously, seems to disappear. First, she steps outside with her child. Afterward, I looked through the scope. The only people who were moving were the woman and maybe a child or two nearby. Then she sets the grenade, he shoots her, and the grenade explodes. Her child is apparently no longer there when this happens, as he ponders the hypothetical scenario that would have occurred had the grenade went off, which it did, or the ensuing firefight if the grenade had killed Marines, maybe even her own child. CNN mischaracterized the story in 2013 and has never issued a correction, saying his first kill was a woman who cradled a toddler with one hand and held a grenade in the other. On Opie and Anthony, Kyle doesn't mention that a child was present when he shot the woman, or when the grenade exploded, which surely would have at least injured a toddler being cradled in her hand or arm. Actually, he said on Opie and Anthony that she was in a crowd of people, which differs from the book.
She was out in the town greeting the Marines during the invasion. As the Marines were coming into the city there, the people were coming out to, show their support for the Marines so the Marines wouldn't shoot them down. Let them know that, hey, we're not fighting you. You just go ahead and come right on in. Well, she came out into the crowd. She had a grenade on her. She pulled the pin and was walking to the Marines.
Whoa. Now, how did you know to keep focus on her, or were you watching from a distance, or were you close?
I was close. I was in the city already.
Okay.
I was up in top of a building watching, trying to keep track of the crowd.
Kyle wrote in American Sniper, I looked through the scope of the sniper rifle, scanning down the road of the tiny Iraqi town. 50 yards away, a woman opened the door of a small house and stepped outside with her child. The rest of the street was deserted. The local Iraqis had gone inside, most of them scared. The film presents in its opening scene the enemy that Chris is fighting. The first images of the Iraqi resistance, a woman sending her own child to die. Even Chris Kyle's book reveals that resistance fighters took steps to warn surrounding civilians of an impending attack on U.S. troops, contrary to the image of fanatical terrorists that didn't care who they killed. Kyle writes, "Insurgents normally put small rocks in the middle of the road to warn others where we were. Civilians usually saw the rocks and quickly realized what was going on. They always stayed far away. Hours might pass before we saw any people again." In the movie, Kyle shoots the child and his mother. The man beside him calls her an evil bitch. The movie portrays Kyle as being haunted by killing people. This anguish is something he not once expressed in the book. He writes, "The first time you shoot someone, you get a little nervous. You think, can I really shoot this guy? Is it really okay? But after you kill your enemy, you see it's okay. You say, great." On second thought, guy suggests a man. With regard to the woman, the book says it was the first time he'd killed anyone while on the sniper rifle. "It was the first time I'd killed anyone while I was on the sniper rifle, and the first time in Iraq, and the only time I killed anyone other than a male combatant." This clearly suggests that this was not the first time he killed someone. On Opie and Anthony, he's asked what it's like to kill for the first time.
Is it hard for you the first time you do it, or?
It definitely was, especially my first shot was on a woman.
Greg Opie Hughes follows up with Kyle, asking,
We're all assuming, was that the first time you killed somebody?
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Wow.
It's established from the very beginning of the film that the enemy is shockingly and wickedly evil. Responding to criticism of the film, Bradley Cooper told journalists it's not a political movie at all. Saying it's not a political movie is, of course, absurd. The film venerates a Navy SEAL sniper who killed Iraqis during an American military campaign and occupation of a foreign country. It demonizes seemingly ordinary Iraqis, a mother and her young child, by inventing stories of wicked cruelty that never happened. The movie was a smash hit, becoming America's highest-grossing war movie. It also earned 6 Academy Award nominations, including for Best Picture. It lost to Birdman. As described by Schmidl in his New Yorker profile, the man that shot Chris Kyle, Mr. Eddie Ray Routh, was a disturbed individual. He'd apparently killed a child in Iraq, after which his personality began to change. His father Raymond said that, while on a vacation in Texas, he was talking all kinds of goddamn bullshit. I mean this off-the-wall shit, how he's Dracula, how he's a werewolf, and all this shit. Twice, Routh walked over to his father's car, retrieved a .357 Magnum, and Raymond took the pistol away both times. After the second instance, he emptied the cylinder and threw the bullets into the lake. He was admitted to the VA hospital in Dallas. Raymond recalled, "The doctor was writing all the stuff down and I said, Eddie, why don't you tell her what you've been telling me all day about wanting to and how you're Dracula and all this bullshit." This time, Routh stayed for 3 weeks. After he was discharged, his family had a fish fry. At the fish fry, he got into a fist fight with his dad and threatened to kill his family. He again landed at the VA and was discharged a few days later. He was sent back once again to the VA after he was pacing around with a knife awaiting government agents. The Dallas VA, reportedly the worst in the nation at the time, released him after a week. His mother, Jody, was desperate, but she happened to work at the school where Chris Kyle's kids went. One day she stopped him in the parking lot and pleaded with him to help her son. Kyle and a friend of his named Chad Littlefield took him to a rifle range. On the way there, Kyle texted Littlefield, "This dude is straight up nuts," with Littlefield replying, "Watch my 6." When they got to the range, Routh shot Kyle and Littlefield with 2 different pistols, reportedly an M1911 and a 9mm 6-hour P226. Kyle was lying face down. He had been shot in the back and in the back of the head. Blood covered his baseball cap. His pistol lay in the sand within reach. Afterward, Routh called his sister, who asked him about his day. "It's kind of shitty. I broke up with my girlfriend from Louisiana." His girlfriend, who was now his fiancée, was not from Louisiana. Routh drove to his sister's house and asked if the world was freezing over, then announced that he had a new truck. His sister Laura asked if he had traded in his car, a Volkswagen Beetle, and he said no, but added, "I sold my soul for a truck. We went to the gun range, I killed them." Laura asked her brother what he was talking about. "Chris and his friend, I killed them. I murdered them." Prosecutors focused on Routh's drug and alcohol use to discount his insanity plea. Their efforts paid off. Routh was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.